Oh my, would you look at that? Welcome back, Miss Kugasaki. What's up guys, Pencil here, and here to do a quick breakdown / review for chapter 267 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as The Decisive Battle in the Uninhabited Demon Defense Shinjuku, part 30. Actually, I actually don't know what this one's called. Is it called that? I'm not on the first page right now. But with that being the case, we have a whole lot to talk about with so little time, so let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Heading me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do mean to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Any other fun fact, sorry for the delay on this. And since 266, it does actually have stuff I really want to talk about in both a short review and a long review format, as scaling and character stuff, and we do want to talk about more in depth. I will get to doing actual proper reviews on that too. I was just away for a bit. That's why this took so long. But with that being the case, this chapter is it called The Decisive Battle in the Uninhabited Demon Defense Shinjuku 30? I actually can't tell. What is it called? Yeah, 38. All right, so we're sticking to it. We made it all the way to the end. We might as well wrap up with that bad boy. But this chapter has a whole bunch to talk about. I do have the timer set up for 4 minutes, so we got to break it into the plot, the character, the scaling, and the future. So let's hop right into the plot. Now, obviously, I mean, this could be it. This really could be it, especially with the confirmation that this is one of the last 5 chapters. I'm going to go into that in its own video because there's a whole bunch of stuff that I feel like is going to be sacrificed for this being the last 5 chapters. But all that aside, the thing I do want to hit on is the fact that Yuji got the hit on. Like, he not only dismantled Sukuna's soul and then slobbered off him to the point where he threw up fingers. No, finger. So I think that's the 4 Sukuna fingers that Megumi, actually, 1, 2, 3, maybe? I think there are 3 fingers. He did throw those up, and he did not swallow those again. So, clearly, the domain expansion did work to a degree, even though it wasn't enough to properly rend apart Sukuna and Megumi's bodies entirely. Bada bing, bada boom. Yuji does land this big, hefty, slappy? Why is it slappy? Sloppy black flash straight to Sukuna's chest to end Sukuna's curse. This does almost kind of sort of feel like the end. And if this is the end, then this is the biggest plot progression we've had in over a year because Sukuna's finally defeated. However, I don't buy it. Once again, until I actually see Sukuna out, cold, clean, knocked out, laid out, done, and I see Megumi Fushiguro back, or we get like an innate domain center, I still do not think Sukuna's finished just yet. There are still 4 chapters left. I'm assuming in terms of the 5 chapters left, this is chapter number 5, so there are 4 chapters left, because I believe we're getting one for each week of September. There's no more breaks. We're on a straight theme line to the end. So we're full sending it through the rest of JJK. And with that being the case, I do ultimately think there still is a little bit more left of Sukuna. You may be wondering, well, what is left? Who could come back and interfere more? Especially after a certain someone came back, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. But that's the biggest plot progression. Obviously, the other biggest plot progression, Nobara's back. Now, on a plot level, I do think this is ultimately necessary because of what last chapter left us with and what was going to happen if she didn't come back in this moment. Because I've seen a lot of people talk about the convenience of it. A lot of people saying she shouldn't have come back at all because it lowers the stakes and sort of undermines the sacrifice she made back in Shibuya. How it undoes Mahito's characterization and a lot of his effectiveness as a villain, considering now the only major character L's he has on his rap sheet are Nanami and who? Nekomaru? Kokishimura? Who? But ultimately, I'm fine with it mainly because of the plot well, not plot essency, because that's not a word. Plot necessity that it serves. With Sukuna being ready and able to open his domain expansion, if Nobara does not interfere at this very moment, Yuji dies. And everyone else does too. Because Sukuna just sits in his domain expansion, fully heals, and then they're cooked. Yuji's domain, especially based on how we see it operate this chapter, it's clearly not strong enough to go band for band with Sukuna's domain. We still don't know what's up with Yuta. We have no idea where he's at. Maki should be fine, but I don't think she'd be effective against Malevolent Shrine. That's why she had to be saved in the first place. Toto and Hana nearby, they die. Like, legitimately, if Nobara does not appear right here, right now, at this point in the plot, everybody dies. We're still on that precipice because of how powerful Sukuna's domain is, because of the fact that he has full access to it. His RCT output's back. He's back. He still cooks the entirety of the verse. So her appearing here is a massive plot point that I think is necessary at this point in time. Also, I'll talk about it a bit more in the scaling section, but I do think this is the best time for her to appear within the logic of the narrative itself, if you know what I'm talking about. Once again, there's a whole lot more I'm going to go into with her return and how it was handled and the characterization behind it in the long review, but just in the quick review, I do want to lay down the idea that I am mostly fine with it. Though I do see the issues that people do have with it, and I can understand the complaints of convenience. But I have about 5 more seconds to talk about the plot before I have to hop into the other juicy chunk of this chapter, the characterization. And I do think the characterization of this chapter, while it is simple, while it is clean, it is fine. It is good that we do get clarification. Well, this is scaling stuff, so I'll save this for a bit later. But in terms of characterization, it's good to see that Gojo was still innately a gambling man. Once again, it's the reason why he and Akari did have some sort of bond, some sort of deep connection. Yeah. No, you know, they roll the dice a little bit on it. Because Yuta could have just consumed Sukuna's finger. They're like, he bluffed and made Sukuna believe. But ultimately, leaving that Sukuna finger out just on the gamble that Nobara could come back and cook up a little bit and go crazy with it. It ended up being a gamble that worked out. The fever ended up working out in their favor. So seeing that side of Gojo, the more playful yet serious side, it's like, no, I got faith in my students. I have faith in y'all. And ultimately, if all else fails, I believe that she'll clutch up exactly when she needs to clutch up. Because this was presumably the person that Gojo was talking about all the way back in 222. Right after 221, right before 223, the battle between Gojo and Sukuna starting, he mentioned that someone's still out of commission. They were very, very vague at the time, and a lot of people thought it could have been Todo. It hypothetically could have been Todo too, but who knows? I think it was very specifically Nobara at this point, because they specifically mentioned she's out of commission. Todo wasn't out of commission, he was just altering his curse technique. So I do think this was a callback hinted at to be Nobara. I think Nobara being part of this gamble here is nice, and character-wise, I do like that Yuji was, one, willing to sacrifice his fingers and fight Sukuna on uneven ground like this, legitimately. Now he's straight up unable to make a proper fist. Like, imagine not having this part of your fist there when you're trying to fight? Why am I saying words so weirdly? But when you're trying to fight, yeah, that's gonna suck horribly. But also, I like how Yuta was willing to put that idea into his head to make sure that any thought of guarding oneself's soul or guarding anything was gone. He made sure that final finger was just off Sukuna's mind, so nothing could set up or Sukuna could not prepare any mental defenses or soul defenses or anything like that, leading to the perfect scenario. Because even when Sukuna realizes it, he doesn't get to understand what it could mean until it's already too late. And for Nobara's return, I'll admit, character-wise, I like how it's written for her. She got up within the hour, was explained the entire situation, asked to be taken to the Sukuna finger, or was told about the Sukuna finger, and said, let me cook. And she proceeded to cook with this binding vow that allowed her to strike the finger, which allowed her to use resonance on the main body of Sukuna. That's good stuff. Once again, Nobara being a character, being a sorcerer in the sense where ultimately she did not care about, like, oh no, is everything okay? Is everything all right? Let me stabilize. Let me worry about myself. No, she's fully locked in. She's fully ready to help, and she's fully there to help out the idiots, the boys, those who need a little bit of an assist right here and now. And seeing Yuji finally smile fully, not just at the possible return of Megami from last chapter, but the confirmed return of Nobara, something that he'd been lingering on and thinking about for what? Like a majority of the series at this point. Like she perished a long time ago. She perished pre-100s. It's been literally 100 plus chapters, 150 plus chapters, I think, since Nobara's, well, no longer confirmed to end. And seeing Yuji smile like that, beautiful. And the thing I do like for Sukuna's characterization here is that he still doesn't give up. Like, for all intents and purposes, he should be cooked. He got hit with resonance. He got hit with the soul dismantle. He got punched in the mouth. He spat up more fingers. He should be, if anything, finally feeling despair. But in this moment, he realizes that no. From Yuji not healing, to Yuji's desperation, the incomplete nature of his domain, everything, even though he's literally falling apart. Ryuan Sukuna refuses to give up. He refuses to stop. He refuses, and he keeps moving forward. And Yuji Tadori is just like him. The two people with unbreakable ideals move forward. But of course, the other thing I like about the characterization, I have 10 seconds, the fact that Sukuna forgot about Nobara and forgot about Divergent Fist. Because he didn't care about the weak, he didn't care about the lesser, he did not consider them threats, and thusly he falls to it, leading to the beautiful, scrumdiddlyumptious Black Flash. But of course, we're talking about Black Flashes, my time is up, let's talk about scaling. Now, you may be wondering, Pencilman, what are you talking about with Nobara's timing being perfect on a scaling front? While Sukuna's RCT output is restored, it's very clear that the rest of his output isn't. If it was, he would have just dismantled Yuji. instead of like going for domain expansion, which is dismantle usually cut him in half, bada bing, bada boom. Only his RCT output was restored by the black flashes. That's it. His domain came back with the first few, and then he finally got his RCT output back after punching some more, and then he got hit by more of Yuji's punches, and then some of Yuji's domain and some of his soul slashes. So naturally, Sukuna's output is still super duper low. Plus, he's burnt through a whole bunch of cursed energy. Plus, he's off guard. Plus, everything. Remember, Nobara, power-wise, is no different than she was in Shibuya. Characters in JJK don't get Zenkai boost. She literally woke up an hour ago. So if she were to have tried this earlier, it likely would have done nothing other than give away the fact that she's alive and make sure that Sukuna reinforces his soul. What is something we know he can kind of do. Not fully to the point where he can like resist, because we know he's always an SSK victim. If Maki lands a hit on him, he cannot block it unless he's specifically using his curse technique, which involves blades. But outside of that, we know Sukuna can either A, face tank some stuff, B, has a super strong soul, and C, can likely combine his ability to face tank stuff with a super strong soul to make sure that this wouldn't be as effective as it was. And Nobara, being as weak as she is, she may have struck it, she may have done resonance, but it probably wouldn't have done anywhere near as much. Saving her from this moment makes sense perfectly from a scaling perspective. Sukuna needs to be this weak. It's the same reason why Inumaki didn't do anything earlier. And why you didn't hear me complain about Inumaki not coming in earlier. Because literally we saw Inumaki try to do something in Sukuna when he was already super duper weak and missing arms and everything, no RCT output, and his throat still exploded. Through a recorder. He didn't even say to Sukuna directly. So ultimately, I'm fine with Nobara coming back from this point on a scaling front. For Sukuna still being able to fight back, I still think that makes sense. Once again, the one thing I think Gege is trying to sell us, and I think it's succeeded in selling to me, to everyone else, and to most people, except for remaining few Gojo fans out there, is that Sukuna's the strongest. He just is. He's the strongest sorcerer. He's, at this point, with only 4 chapters left, I'm confident. I almost want to, like, if I had money, I'd put money on the idea that the merger's not happening. Sukuna is the strongest character in this manga. He will go down as the strongest character in this manga, and he will not be surpassed. That's it. He is the strongest sorcerer. And thusly, seeing him still fight in the face of inevitability, even after Yuji's trapped him in his domain, even after Yuji's hit him with his domain sure hit effect, yeah, it makes perfect sense. At least in my opinion, on the scaling front, it makes absolute logical sense that he'd still keep fighting. And he can still do this much to Yuji, even though Yuji does seemingly facing a good amount, and it allows him to use a cook up a Divergent Fist. And of course, the scaling for Yuji. Him being able to use Divergent Fist in the scenario, him not being able to heal due to the, well, really, the curse energy expenditure, and him in a scenario where he's still forced to rely on punches and black flashes, and that doing real proper damage to Sukuna all makes sense. That's the one thing I'll give Gege progressively throughout the Shinjuku Showdown in terms of the application of raw power and how these characters with different power levels interact. It's all made sense. There's been very little times where I'm like, in terms of the scaling, and this chapter is kind of the pinnacle of that when it comes to the specific application and return of Nobara and the amount of damage she does relative to Sukuna. The fact that Sukuna, with Resonance, a technique we know that attacks the soul internally, and Yuji's soul dismantles, which we know attack the soul again, and his own punches, all that, seeing Sukuna tank all that still makes sense just because of how powerful he is and his RCT output being back. And of course, seeing Yuji use Divergent Fist and have it be hard enough to stagger Sukuna does make sense, considering we know that this Yuji is more than powerful enough to do that. We've seen him climb up to Sukuna's level physically enough to the point where a Yuji who's still in Black Flash fever, who's still tweaking on Black Flashes, absolutely. I fully believe a Divergent Fist that Sukuna wasn't even expecting would 100% stagger him just enough for an uppercut. Jeez, I already burned through my 4 minutes for scaling. But let's talk about the future. Now, obviously, like I mentioned, that was 13 minutes. Obviously, like I mentioned, we're in the last 5 chapters. I'm going to make a whole separate video talking about what we're not going to get. And with this being likely the number 5 of the 5 chapters remaining, we likely only have 4 chapters left. I think we're getting at least 1 to 2 more chapters of Sukuna. I think we're going to get one more final bit of like maybe physical combat between the two, because once again, I do think ultimately the Yuji and Sukuna fight has had a good chunk of interference. Last week it was Megumi's interference, this week it's Nobara's interference. I do think the last bit of knockdown drag out does need to be between Yuji and Sukuna. I don't think this battle is fully over, so that'll be chapter 4 of the 5 that are left. Then for the third one, I could see like a legit conversation, kind of in the same vein that Sukuna had with Gojo and Kashimo and Jogo. I can see Itadori having that last conversation with Sukuna, and ultimately, once again, hammering in the themes of community versus isolation, and ultimately where strength is truly found, and a strength that transcends even the strongest who stand at the peak of the mountain in community is born, versus Sukuna's isolation and ultimately what that means. Maybe slight Hain-era flashback, but I don't think we're going to get much of that. I think the last two chapters are going to be epilogue. Or like the last chapter is going to be epilogue. I don't really see much, because once again, I don't think the merger is going to happen. I don't think we're really going to cover the merger in 5 chapters, plus the conditions can't be met unless Sukuna does some sort of binding vow with his remaining points that Megumi has over, which I still think would be weird. I think Villain Megumi, for everyone who wanted that, I still don't get why y'all wanted that. I meant to make a video about that. I may still, once again, we only have a little bit left. I'll talk about Villain Megami as a concept and why I never really rocked with it, but that's not happening. I don't think anything merger related is happening. I don't think Kenny return is happening. I don't think Gojo return is happening. I think we're kind of done in terms of the series. Like, it's weird to say that, right? Considering we still have 4 chapters left. But in the presumable 20 pages, or 80, since each chapter is about 20 pages, in the 80 pages we have left of Jujutsu Kaisen, I think we're just going to be doing some wrap-up, some cleanup, a final bit of boxing, and then that's it. That's the thing. With having a hard cap like 5 chapters, now knowing there's no more wiggle room, there's no more vagueness, and we kind of met the condition. Remember what Gege said a long time ago. Thank you for everyone who in the spoiler discussion for 266 corrected me. The idea that one of these 4 would end up perishing and the rest would live, or only one would live and the rest would perish, or they'd all die. Yeah, we kind of met that condition. Megumi's presumably going to be saved. Nopara is alive. And unless Yuji ends up sacrificing himself and Gojo ends up coming back, which I don't see happening because of the whole idea of community and building towards the future that Gojo wanted in the first place, I think we've met it. JJK is going to have a bittersweet ending. I don't think it's going to be... I don't think it's going to be like purely happy. All these characters are permanently scarred, damaged, and once again, we don't know the state of Yuta. He may just be dead. He may just be, like, once again, we don't know. But ultimately, with Nobara coming back, with Megumi likely being saved, with Itadori Yuji being scarred but alive, that's 3. Our 3 main characters alive. Gojo's gone, so is Higuruma, so is Kashimo, but hey, as much as I love Higuruma and Kashimo, kind of randoms. So thusly, I don't think their loss ultimately means much in the grand scheme of things. So that's one thing I will talk about. Maybe JJK has gone soft. But once again, that's another video for another time. Ultimately, I am excited for the future of JJK, though. It is a end. It is a conclusion. But ultimately, it's a conclusion that I've been waiting for a while. And it's going to be fun to finally be able to look back and see it all laid bare. But ultimately, that's what I think. Here's what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave hammer in the comment section down below. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is That Guy with the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Zera, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Redwolf 4765, Paris Arnold, Astro, and Brandon Payne. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Zombie Hunter, Sean, Midnight Lord 21, King, Meliodas, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 members: Autumn, Mornings, Lazo, and Fine. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members: Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons: Michael Williamson, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.